his story.
Cool. Awesome. Great. Well, I know it's 8 a.m. and if you were like me in college, sometimes I'm not fully awake yet. Wanted to kind of get a feel for who I'm talking to here first. So if you could raise your hand if you are a freshman here. Yeah, all right. And how about a sophomore? Okay, and juniors? Any seniors? All right, cool. Awesome. And how about if you're interested or planning to go into a career in business or some aspect of business? Okay, cool. Awesome. Great. Well, as Sean mentioned, there's a few things that I want to talk about from like an experience standpoint. I'm not that far removed from where you're sitting at all. I think it's probably been like 7 or 8 years. So, and it's been, from my first job out of school was literally throwing a pickaxe into the ground. Went to school for 4 years and was digging ditches for a construction company for a year. So it's by no means is this meant to intimidate. I think my goal is to make a path that I've taken feel more accessible for people that are interested in that. And then also really encourage you guys to take advantage of the resource that you have in Sean. I know Sean didn't bring me here to brag on him, but I pay good money and would pay probably more, don't tell him that, to get his expertise for my businesses and for my employees. And you guys have this resource twice a week, right? For an hour. So I cannot understate how massively impactful him and his firm have been to my career. The fact that I'm sitting here with a successful 2 exits, one business that I started from the ground up and exited in January, and the one that I bought and resold this year, due in large part to Sean and his expertise, as well as Mike, who's one of his colleagues, and Jeremy. That I can genuinely say that my family would probably be bankrupt and I'd be financially ruined if it wasn't for Sean. So that's been huge for us, obviously. And this being formerly PBU as I knew it, and being a Christian centered university, I wanted to start off talking about what the Lord's taught me in this past, specifically in the past 4 years with my career. And it's primarily centered around the concepts of like where my security and where my value comes from. So I don't know if anybody has their Bible with them, but if somebody could pull up Matthew 10, 17 through 24, that'd be great. This is going to be a familiar passage. It's not probably going to be new for most of you, but we'll just start there. So whoever's got that, just raise your hand and I'll have you read it. It's Matthew 10, 17 through 24. I don't know, I think my front row's got it. One of you guys want to read it? Go ahead.
10:17.
Yeah, yep.
Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts and flog you in their synagogues.
Oh, that's not it. That's an interesting passage, I'm sure, but not related to business. Hang on. Mark 10, 17 through 24. There you go. Wrote it down wrong. Beware of men, they will flog you. Sean, you expect me to go that direction? Yeah. Yeah. Mark 10, 17 through 24. Go for it.
And as he was setting out on his journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your father and mother." And he said to him, "Teacher, all these I have kept from my youth." And Jesus, looking at him, loved him and said to him, "You lack one thing. Go, sell all that you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. and come, follow me. Disheartened by the saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. And Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, how difficult it will be for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of God. And the disciples were amazed at his words. But Jesus said to them again, children, how difficult it is to enter the kingdom of God.
And then I'll just finish up here. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. And they were even more astonished and said to him, then who can be saved? Looking at them, Jesus said, with people it is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible with God. This is a convicting verse or passage for us talking about accounting and optimizing for cash flow, making money, especially if the Lord's commandment to this person who has succeeded in that endeavor was to give it all away. So what's the purpose? Why do it if this could actually keep you from entering the kingdom of God? And if you think about it, even if some of you do not have financial success by American culture standards, the fact that you're in this room right now is you are a rich young ruler by the standard of most of the world. And I think this really speaks to the perspective we should take when we think about money and we think about success in business. For me, selling my businesses, having good exits, being financially stable, I need to be in a place where if I looked at my bank account and it was drained tomorrow, that nothing between me and the Lord has changed at all. I should not be dismayed over that because my standing with the Lord is consistent. And that's where security and value come. I mean, digging ditches, I did not have what I have today, right? And that's I think super important as you get started in your career to be mindful of where your motivation's coming from, how you perceive money and monetary success. I can speak from someone who, by worldly standards, has been on both sides of that equation. Some more than I'll probably get into, in a first meeting with you guys. But I think it's just very, very important, and I think I'd be remiss, especially in talking about successes and financial successes, without giving good warning that this topic could keep you from entering the kingdom of God. However, the end of that verse says that with God all things are possible, and it is impossible for any of us to enter that kingdom without the Lord, regardless of what sin we may be attaching ourselves to. And money is an easy one, and the Bible has a lot to talk about it. If you really want to get a biblical perspective on money, one of the things that really helped me was reading and rereading the Gospel of Luke and really picking out what God has to say about money and what role money should play in my life and in my career and in my walk with the Lord. So hopefully that resonates somewhat with you. But I will talk about, I think, an area that is believe me, it'll get more positive as we go here. But I'm going to start with a story around what I meant when I said that I'd be in financial ruin without Sean and the expertise, the accounting expertise that is needed in business. And that's the story. I don't know if you guys have covered working capital, but working capital is an incredibly important thing. The thing to think about it is if you need to go buy groceries, you need to buy lunch, you want to take someone on a date. Your working capital is what you got in the bank. It's are you able to operate and perform with whatever endeavor you're doing with the money in the bank. I'm sure it's more nuanced. Sean could definitely give you a better, probably more academic and fuller description and definition of working capital. But my learning around working capital was a scar on the streets of business. I wish I would have had this class. But the story around buying, the company that I bought in November of 2021, I can get into a little bit more further in a more positive light. But my focus in buying that company, I didn't have a lot of money. My parents can't have some money, but they were not willing to necessarily cut me any breaks, and that's great. I really appreciated that. It helped a lot. but it also left me in a position without safety nets, without really an understanding of what I was getting myself into in buying that company. And Sean mentioned this company was losing about $250,000 a year before I bought it. And I don't have that kind of money sitting around when I bought it. So it was a huge risk. And in order to buy it, I did kind of burn the ships, sometimes unbeknownst to me, with personal guarantees around debt, around putting my life savings in there, delayed some things that we had planned as a family to take advantage of that opportunity. But my focus at that time, and I got laser focused, and this was, I remember, talked about in our early accounting calls, like, what kind of cash position will you be in after you buy the business? I was like, it'll work itself out. I'll figure it out. Like, it'll be fine. So throwing caution to the wind, put everything that I could towards buying that business. Well, the night that I bought the business, the things that they don't tell you about is you're playing a bigger game, right? And there's bills that are due, there's payroll that's due in 2 weeks, and customers don't necessarily pay on the timetables that you would want them to be paid on. So you can think about, you've got a required bill to keep the lights on or the heat on in your home, and your paycheck's not coming, for 2 weeks until after that bill is due. That times added like 4 zeros to that. That's kind of the situation that I was in. And that was the time, I think, where I was put to the test with security and value. And it was incredibly challenging. It was the only time I've ever getting super vulnerable up front on a 8 a.m. on Wednesday or Thursday. But that was the only time that I've been brought seriously to tears around business, because I was on the hook. I had 15 people that I had just brought into my purview under my leadership, and I didn't know how I was going to pay them first payroll. And you can imagine, I was a younger guy. Some of these people are in their 60s, getting ready for retirement. Some people are in their 50s with kids in college. And I'm like, I can't make payroll? Like, are you kidding me? Thankfully, Mike and Sean had some wonderful ideas that kept the lights on. But the big thing, and I was talking to my dad about it, and again, didn't provide a safety net, which I was pretty pissed that night, but I've respected him a lot. He's like, as your dad, I totally understand, like, this is really tough, Stephen, but he said, and he was still somewhat of a shareholder in the business afterwards, he said, but as a shareholder in this business, you got to freaking get to work. Like, you got to figure this out. This is not, the death of this business by any means. And what's funny is now, looking back, the challenges that we've faced over the past 3 years, that was a pretty small challenge comparatively. Coming up with that kind of money at that period of time was just insurmountable in my mind. But I think as the Lord in any area of our lives, as He shows His good gifts, as He gives anything to us, whether that's a challenge or whether that's a gift, He escalates what those look like, over time. And I can say, that we obviously made it through that time frame, but He definitely provided the path, unbeknownst to sort of my naivete in business. So I think if you walk away from anything from the talk today, I think the primary thing I want you to think about is, where does your security and value come from? That's primary. Secondarily, I think it's the role of accounting in business. It is the language of business. It is like the bread and butter of business. It's what you can look at to know. It's kind of like playing basketball without a scoreboard. It's like, if you don't have the scoreboard, you're not exactly sure how you're doing. Accounting is that. Your financial statements are that scoreboard, but it also is like, what play are we going to run? Like, how are we going to finish out this quarter? And using basketball, not fiscal quarter, but the accounting will set that path. And that's, kind of what I wanted to start talking about a bit more, is accounting being the language of business. And I've got something that hopefully will bring some joy and smile to some faces here in a minute, but I think our health and how we perform as human beings, medicine or anatomy and physiology It's like if you went to a doctor and the doctor did not know how to talk to you about your anatomy or your physiology, it'd be pretty useless to talk about your health or to prescribe medicine or to determine what's wrong. You can think about accounting in the same way. If you're a business person trying to figure out what to do in business, but you don't have the tool sets, of accounting to decide what to do, it's like a doctor without an understanding of the human body. You failed before you started. So I think, I know Sean mentioned that you guys have gone through, I put something in here that I thought was going to be a huge challenge, but everyone should know the answer based off what Sean was telling me. But I wanted to go through a couple key terms that I have found for myself to be some of the most important things to know in accounting. And I've got a giveaway for those who can describe these terms. And Sean will be the judge of your definition. So I'll say, a phrase, and then whoever raises their hand, can give me a definition or of that term, an accounting term, and then Sean, you be the judge of if it's right. So, working capital is the first one. Who's got it? Go ahead.
Money you have accessible in the bank to spend.
That is as good of a definition as we've covered in this class.
All right, here you go. $20.
Thank you.
All right. How about, I think I might see some hands this time. How about net income? Go ahead.
When revenues exceed expenses.
Correct.
All right.
Accounting jargon, though.
Yep, perfect. All right. How about revenue? Go ahead.
Money earned by services performed.
Or products sold, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Sean's the guy. Gross margin.
That's the one that I don't think we've covered. In case anyone knows it.
Go ahead.
I would say it's the total difference between expenses of a product and the sale value of it.
Oh, sounds pretty close to me.
That's pretty close. Technically, it's the sale price of the product minus the cost of the product, excluding any other expenses. But that's pretty close.
Yeah, that was pretty close. I think he was getting there. Nice. All right. And then last one, I believe. Accrual accounting.
We just had a test on this one, so you should guys.
And it sounds like you guys looked at one of my company's P&Ls to learn it. So
Yeah.
It was anonymized, but it was one of my companies. So let's hear it. Go ahead.
Accounting that occurs when a service is performed rather than when cash is exchanged.
Correct.
Nice. I don't know, you were the only one, so here you go. That's a good one. All right. I was surprised. I thought there would be more hands after the first one. Cool. Well, so I talked about this a little bit, but Sean, and his firm are accountants, as you know. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about as you start to learn different aspects of business, including accounting, and something that's super important is it's important for you not to try to be the smartest person in the room. And I'm certainly not in most rooms that I'm in. And my goal and my job as a leader is to put people that have skill sets, have capabilities into their places to perform. And that does not mean like me being the answer or the sage on the stage for everyone. So I would encourage you in your career too to seek out the expertise or become one aspect of that expertise, whether that's in accounting, whether that's in sales, whether that's in operations. If you really want to succeed, I think it's one of those two paths. You are the subject matter expert. You're the domain expert that can be relied on for answers in a very specific area, or you are the person that can identify and coordinate and bring those experts together. honestly, most of running business is that. About 90% of my job is putting people in the right seat and enabling them to perform and supporting them to perform. Or it is trying to stress test and apply the knowledge that's in the room. I'd say that if I'm operating best as CEO of a company, that's what I'm doing. And that requires a foundational knowledge of everything, which is intimidating and challenging, but it also requires humility once you start to learn things to allow others to have answers. So there's a big dichotomy there. And one of the things that I think is foundational, and one of the things that we're really focused on right now in our software company in particular, is having all the leaders have a baseline understanding of accounting. Gross margin, which we just talked about, that was actually, we spent 2 hours with highly paid leaders in my company, trying to get everyone on board and understand that concept. So if you walk out of this classroom or you graduate from this school with a really solid understanding of gross margin or net income or revenue, you are far ahead of some of the leaders in my company that are paid very, very well. So like that's a huge benefit. Some of them are, it's not their domain of expertise, but in order to be a leader, you need to be able to speak the language of business. So that, I think, very philosophically and more at a higher, bird's eye view is, I think, the importance of accounting, in my businesses. But the other area that I really wanted to spend some time talking about is this whole concept of running the numbers, and the numbers will tell you what to do. I don't know. We didn't end up with power, right? No. Okay. I was going to bring up one of the newer company's P&Ls. I have a party rental business. We rent out bounce houses and slides. Got a nice 25-foot water slide. I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, so it was a great business to get into. They love it. And then Sean's got a few young ones as well. We'll have to link up for the twins' first birthday. But that business last year was our first year in business. We did about $6,000 in revenue, and we grew I forget what the percentage is, but we grew to $30,000 in revenue this year. And it was a lot of running the numbers and determining, okay, what are these numbers telling us? How do we execute in this business? And then what priorities are we making in that business? And that was true. And what I'm going to walk you through is kind of the story of, and this part I might not necessarily distribute on social media just because it's a little bit too transparent, but the story of coming into this software business. And there you go. And what slides do you have? One of the customers of BBM. The story of coming into the software business and then acquiring that business, what it looked like to actually turn it around, what tangibly happened, what did we do? And then how did we turn around? And we sold it for 12 times what I bought it for. So you think about it, if I bought it just for sake of numbers, I bought it for $83,000, which I didn't, but just for the sake of this, bought it for $83,000. 12 times is $1 million. So 12x in 2.5, 3 years was huge. But tangibly, what did I do, right? Buying this business in 2021, selling it in July. What happened? Spoiler alert, it wasn't me. I just helped, again, coordinate the right people to execute on a very clear path. But I will say, and I'm super early, I sold it in July 19th, and we're October 4th, right, or 3rd. So it's very recent that this happened. And I can genuinely say that it was primarily done by running the numbers, and the numbers told me what to do. So you marry that with market and product intelligence and understanding. But let me write up. I think I'm going to draw. It's called the value triangle. I'll draw that on the board here. To kind of illustrate what I mean. I'm not going to get it wrong, so I'm going to look at my cheat sheet. So we got value, return on this corner of the triangle. We've got the price of whatever the products or services that you're delivering, the revenue that's generated by the business, the price that you're charging your customer, and then you've got the cost. We could look at this as the cost of the products or services that you're delivering, but I would say the cost of all your expenses in your business would be on this side. And this concept here and where you're at with this dotted line really describes how you're performing in your business. So for those that are visual learners, and Sean, if you want to elaborate on any area here, you can chime in for sure. But as you approach any role that you have in a business, whether it's digging ditches or whether it's running the business, optimizing this triangle is super, super important. For instance, when I was digging ditches, the owner of that construction company asked me to go buy all of the equipment that I needed for that job. So in my mind, not at the time, but it could have been really focused on how do I optimize this triangle for that business, and that will speak volumes to the owner of that business if you are optimizing here. So think about it this way. So we've got the value or return that's delivered to a customer. That's what we got right here. So this is the customer's value. The difference between the price that you charge that customer and the value that they're going to generate from buying whatever you're giving them, we call that ROI, or the return on investment that they spent. So this is what the customer bought, the price that they bought it at. Say they bought, say they bought its stock at $1 and sold it at $4, they made $3 here. So pretty simple, but that's the ROI that you're going to achieve as a customer of any business, is the difference between the value that you derive from the product or service and the price that you pay. And then you look at the difference between the price that a customer pays your business and the cost to keep the lights on in that business. Everything from the email, accounts that you have to pay to keep people's emails flowing through, to, the shovels if you're a construction company, to the servers if you're a software company. So that's everything that you can think of to keep the lights on. That's going to be your cost or your run rate. And inside here is your profit. And one of the things I was just talking with Sean a little bit about too, before I started, was a lot of people, and I was super cognizant of this coming into the business, especially as somebody who was half the age of 3 of my employees, is like, if I'm just talking about profit, it can feel pretty stale, it can feel pretty self-centered. It can feel like, okay, why am I working so hard so that Steven gets more profit for his business? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And it can be really hard in moments of trial or challenging times in a business to prioritize and work hard if the only thing that's being communicated about the goal of that business is profit for the sake of profit. It also, and when we think about it eternally, it actually just makes things harder to get into the kingdom of God, and so as Jesus said in Mark 10. So it's really not a worthy cause in and of itself to pursue. And this is my opinion, of course. However, it is incredibly important when you think about how to continue and grow the value that you're delivering to clients, and also the situation and environment that you're providing to employees and for yourself and your family. So this could be different, the answer to that question of why am I doing this is different for each person. But in general, from the business perspective, there's a really good book called Good Profit. I'm not sure if you guys have talked at all about private equity, but the Koch brothers, Koch, they own a very large private equity firm. They own, I think, a couple of our customers now. And they've got, I think it's something like $10 to $20 billion worth of businesses under management that they've bought and run. But they talk about this concept of good profit. And good profit is when you are optimizing this triangle, you're providing enough profit, not just to keep the lights on, but to build a business that a customer is super thrilled about doing business with. You can think about like, trying to think about a good business that you guys might enjoy, even like a local pizza shop. If that local pizza shop is not optimizing for profit, you know, who knows what kind of stuff is going to be in your pizza? Who knows if there's going to be cleanliness in the kitchen? It's like, in order for you as a customer to derive value from that business, there absolutely must be profit in that business. If that pizza shop turns into Pizza Hut, right, and is delivering hopefully high quality food for more people, are escalating the impact that they're having on their customers, then you want to look at optimizing for profit. So you can think about this for something that's a little bit more important, like a nonprofit, say feeding, you know, starving children. If you're going to make a bigger impact, you need to be optimizing this triangle. And it's a continuum, right? You can definitely err on one side of being money hungry and greedy, but then you could also be way on the other side of, I'm going to deliver value at the expense of myself to the point where I'm no longer in a position to serve. And that's the continuum that you need to find a good balance on in any business. But I will tell you, with a business that isn't huge, but you know, now up to about 20 or so people, that if I'm not appropriately describing why, you know, customers are achieving value and how each person in that business is making an impact on achieving that value, you immediately lose the benefit or the motivation to optimize for profit as an employee or in any business. So you could think about, like, you know, when Tom's shoes hit the scene and they were talking about getting children, you know, like that don't have shoes, getting them shoes, and every shoe that you bought, they would give one to a child in need. It's this whole concept of making an impact that really blew up that business. Now, their business model, they didn't run the numbers and let the numbers tell them what to do. It was an unsustainable level of giving that ultimately left them in a position where they struggled to deliver any value. So it's super important for you to think about optimizing this triangle. I know I'm throwing a lot out there. I didn't really ask for questions. Does anybody have any questions on this or thoughts on this whole concept? No?
Can I add something, Stephen?
Yeah.
So this is something we actually talk with our clients about a lot, where a lot of businesses, the way they run is they figure out what is our cost going to be. So let's say for the Bounce Masters, we figure, okay, it's going to cost us about $15,000 to buy the equipment, and then we need to rent a truck every time we have a delivery, and so on and so forth. Okay, well, we need to make at least $36,000 to break even. Then we dictate all of our pricing and all of our customer experience around, we need to hit that number. And that's it. And so they're taking this cost and they have this profit in mind of where they want to be, and that all dictates the price. But in turn, it continues and they dictates what the value, what the ROI is for the customer. On the other hand, you can take a step over here and say, what value or return do we want to give to our customer? What ROI do we want them to have? What is it going to take to make sure they're getting the most value possible? Now, let's set a price so that we can make a profit doing that. Completely different approach. And that's something that's really important in the business world, is if you're focused on cost, which at some point in your career, there will be a manager who's focused on cost, then everything is going to be focused about cost, including your conversation with the customer. If your focus is value, what's the ROI? Well, the value in accounting, is public accounting, is not only financial return, it's not only, okay, your company's not going bankrupt, but it's peace of mind. It's knowing you're making the right decisions. It's knowing that there's no opportunity cost lost. And we start talking about all of that return on investment and all that value, where this price lands completely changes. Mm-hmm. And what we're able to deliver completely changes.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as a sales methodology, value-based selling is something that became really popular I think probably a long time ago, but probably like 10 years or so ago, but became a really instrumental approach to describing the benefits that a customer is going to get. So for instance, if I were to sell you this cup of coffee and talk to you about the milligrams of caffeine that you're going to get and the different types of processes physiologically that's going to catalyze in your body and how you're going to feel different types of hormones, and that's going to give you this type of feeling, as opposed to just saying like, this will wake you up. Like, it's really tasty and it wakes you up. That's like, you don't necessarily care about all the nuts and bolts of how I got from the cost to the profit or to the price. That's like, okay, you're gonna have a server that's 4 gigs, 10 gigs of RAM. You know, it's gonna give you a disk of 1 terabyte. It's like, it's actually just a Facebook account. You can connect with your friends. It's like, those are the types of things that you think about in selling. You wanna talk about and describe the value that a customer is going to derive this, and paint them a picture of their state after using your product or using your service. So like for Sean, if I were to, being a customer of his, the state of value that I'm in after buying his firm's services is one that has peace of mind about our business running profitably and keeping the lights on. It has peace of mind of my family not resulting in financial ruin. It has the peace of mind that I'm going to make payroll in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. But then it also has the peace of mind and the ability for us to just be focused on delivering the value that we can deliver to customers. So that's, you know, kind of a metaphor within a metaphor. So it might be a little bit challenging. But for DocLive, which is my software company, the value that we're delivering is basically making people's lives easier day to day within a manufacturing company, but then also helping managers and executives within a manufacturing company make really great decisions. And that's I think the core 2 areas. So for instance, one of my customers, before they bought, they didn't have our product. They had something go wrong with the manual data entry type work that they were doing, and they were losing $1 million a day with having their manufacturing floor shut down. So I could have gone in and said, hey, you don't need to be typing in the $5 invoice into your system. You don't need to be just being a data monkey, and that might be worth maybe a part-time person's salary, maybe $20,000, $30,000 over the course of a year. It's like, that would be, like Sean said, starting with the cost. It's like, okay, it's going to cost us maybe, software margins are pretty high. So it might cost us maybe $5,000. We're going to sell it for maybe $30,000, and they're going to get the value of maybe $50,000. Well, instead, if I ask the right questions, it's like, what does it cost you guys to have your manufacturing floor down? $1 million a day. It's like, okay, so that's $365 million a year. That's a very different, I'm selling them a $30,000 product to save the risk of $365 million. Is very different. It's a very different discussion when it comes to sales. The negotiation is much easier as well when you're talking about, okay, I'm actually going to sell this for 80 to 100K a year. I'm not going to, I'm going to give them a 10x ROI on the time period that we were selling it at. It's like a no-brainer for them. But at the end of the day, our cost, we can now over-invest into value. We no longer need to just make sure that we're staying at the $5,000 cost, for that product. We can now over-invest. We could hire somebody just dedicated to that customer. The value that they're going to get is probably way above and beyond what even I was selling, if I've got that kind of profit to invest into that value creation. And then it's also like, okay, now the pressure is off as an employee. You can focus without having to worry about whether or not this company is going to be around tomorrow. You can focus on just delivering value. And now the customer and the company that you're working for is massively benefiting from that approach. So let me kind of tactically talk through some of the timeline that we had in DocLive. Where am I at on time here?
30 minutes.
Okay, cool. So, let's see where to start. So in 2018, here, I'll start on this side. I started as a entry-level hire in this software company. That was my first job in tech. was just pounding the phones, trying to get leads generated for this company, and quickly found out gaps in this approach that we're talking about to how this company was selling their products and services, to the point where they were not able to justify a price that gave them a profit. So they were over here with their price. Their cost was here, and they had a negative on a good year profit or loss, at the end of the year. So in 2018, they're like, in order for this business to keep around, we really need to start selling more. They were like, we need to start selling more at this price so that we can get some sort of profit going. But it's very unsustainable. So 2018, I come on, we'll just call it an SDR, which is sales development rep, getting leads. And as opposed to just doing this, which could have done, my goal was, okay, like I want to be working on the problems that are actually going to help this business win. Leads is not the answer to this. Like it is a helpful thing. Sales definitely cover a lot of issues, but if you're at, they were at about in revenue, so their price was resulting, and they're losing it. That's not the right problem. It's an unscalable methodology. You're already up. Why can't you make a profit off that? It's not a very scalable business. So like leads doesn't necessarily solve that problem. My approach was, okay, how can we modify our pricing as a part of that? And how can I gather information from my prospective clients or our current clients and determine what kind of pricing model we should actually be delivering to customers? So up until probably 2019, so about a year of selling internally. That's the other thing is, when you're in a business, you think in sales, right? You got to sell externally, get clients in the door. Almost every element has this at play where you need to sell a concept internally if you want to make a change happen. It's on you. It's your ownership to do that. So here we moved to, and I won't get into all the nuts and bolts because we could be here for the rest of the day. But SaaS subscription is a business model. I recommend looking it up if you're really curious about recurring revenue and the benefits that those have. I mean, this is how you get from 1x to 12x in 2.5 years is recurring revenue. And so SaaS subscription that I helped bring, again, coordinated smarter people than me to bring this concept into this business. Immediately in 2020, we had it fully rolled out, and I'll have to look at the P&L to make sure I'm not overstating. But I do know that in 2020, we went from a loss to a profit in the first 6 months of 2019. The problem was old habits die hard, right? And as Sean saw, and you could probably give much more in-depth if you remember, because he did all the analysis on this business before we bought it, where we were at, where that business was at. But the amount of money that they were dumping into their infrastructure could have supported a business. So they're spending just a massive amount of overhead and totally gutting any profit that they're able to deliver there. So they still, in 2020, I forget exactly what the numbers were, but just for the sake of this, say they're losing another. Yeah.
So this isn't something we've covered a lot in class. But so for a business, you have your revenue, you have your cost of sales, which is essentially the cost of your product. And then there is, so that's how you get to your gross margin. But there's more of a breakdown, but essentially everything after that is pretty safely part of your overhead. And so overhead is the cost of keeping the lights on, utilities, it's the cost of your servers, it's the cost of paying taxes, your admin staff, and things like that. And what I see really commonly in businesses is that they start making some revenue and they start feeling really good about the growth of their company. And they can see where they're gonna be, they're saying in 2018, they can see where they're gonna be in 2025. And they're like, I wanna scale to that. And so what they start doing is they start investing dramatically into their overhead, into their admin team, into their software, into their systems, training, etc. And next thing you know, they're in 2019, and they have the same amount of overhead as they should have in 2025. And that's something that's really important in business, is that as a good business person, regardless of whether you're an owner or anywhere in the organization, you should be able to look down the road and see what's coming next. But you need to stay in the present. You need to say, okay, great, that's where I want to go. But for right now I'm delivering this value. I want to deliver value that's all the way over here. And then I can charge a price over here and have a cost over here. But for right now, my value is right here. And so my cost needs to stay where it's supposed to be. And so the idea of value-based billing isn't that you ignore costs, but that you look at what value are you creating, and then that dictates your costs. If you start putting costs in the driver's seat and saying, hey, we're going to accumulate these costs so that we can create this value, you're more likely than not going to have costs outpacing the value you're creating.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, and that's I don't know if you're done. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm good. I'm just
Okay.
trying to put profit at the bottom.
Yeah, cool. And that's like what business models are all about. Jeff Bezos and Amazon, he said, your profit is my opportunity. So like his business model is to have his price lower than everybody. Same value. He's not focused on value there with their online selling business, with their cloud server business. It's a totally different story. With their grocery business, it's a different story. But with the actual Amazon that we all started with, right? He said, your profit here is my opportunity because I'll just undercut your price. So there's a few different ways that you can build this business, right? Here, this is all about quantity, right? He needs to get every single person buying multiple items on Amazon every single day in order to actually scale profit into something that's going to be beneficial to his shareholders, which he did. Everybody buys on Amazon, right? So like this is you can think about this. These are even the ways that you deliver business, or business models. Like a boutique clothing company, like a luxury brand like Louis Vuitton or Gucci, they would take a totally different approach. The value, a shirt that you're wearing is honestly probably the same as TJ Maxx, right? But the price is going to be all the way over here. Their cost, and unfortunately with outsourced to overseas, is the same or less than a lot of these basic brands. And not to disparage these companies. Sorry, it sounds kind of like I'm poo-pooing on luxury brands. Some of them do it right, but it's a totally different business model, right? They're gonna suck as much as they can out of the value, and it's perceived value, right? Like if I walked in here with a nice Gucci suit with like really nice velvety shoes and a big Gucci belt, you guys would be like, whoa, who the heck is this guy, right? At the end of the day, I spent $20 on this blazer, and it's probably made in the same factory, So this concept is another business model. So you can think about this as Gucci, this is Amazon, and then you could also look at it as, okay, we're going to start in this model, and then we're going to move our cost as far as we can over here. So now at the end of our triangle is over here. The price and value didn't change, but now we've got all this room for profit. So that's kind of the ways in which that you can grow a business, right? You could either increase your price, hopefully increasing your value to justify that price. You could decrease your cost, gobble it up, like Andrew, or what's his name, Horowitz said, software is going to eat the world. It's going to drive everything to zero. So you can drive that cost to zero. Or you can do some combination of the above here. So for somebody like Uber, they basically went to market. Their cost, they were going to do what Sean said, right? They're just going to spend. They're going to spend as if they're a $1 billion company from day one. Their burn rate in VC is like $10 million a month or something was their burn rate. So they're going to way outspend, but they're just going to infuse their business with as much cash as possible from investors. And then they're going to figure out this triangle after they get to a certain level of scale. So that's another way to do it. Not encouraged, especially if you're bootstrapping, which is basically, that's what I came into, is a bootstrap company with an Uber model without a path to get to Uber. It's like, this is a recipe for disaster. So anyway, so we went to SaaS subscription. We did see an uptick in profit for a very limited period of time. But again, like Sean mentioned, they got really excited and were like, okay, we could probably be a $5 million company. Let's invest in that overhead. Or they had other divisions. Let's take on some of the expenses of that other division because now we've got all this profit. What happens is you ultimately end up right where you started, and now you're in this doom loop of trying to solve for your loss without actually focusing on the right problem. The loss, the financial statement, is a backwards facing scoreboard. It's like the Chicago Bulls losing, right? And then they're like, man, what can we do to have won that game? The game's over. You lost the game. Like, you got to think about, okay, how are we going to move forward and learn from those mistakes? What plays are we gonna run this next game and learn from that loss? So anyway, I think that point's dead there. So in 2020, when they resulted in this, I was like, forget this. What I need to do is pin the cost of sales outside of some of like the hard costs like servers or things like that. I need to pin what this company is spending on sales in general. I need to pin that at a certain retainer rate. They just need to pay a certain flat rate for sales. So they were spending about on just sales, just like sales team, staff, software to support sales team. They're spending about on that. So I pitched to them, pay my outsourced company a year, and I will figure out how to get you the sales that you're looking for. A lot of that just looked like me waking up at 4 a.m. before I had kids and working until 8. But that was a time. Not necessarily what I'd recommend, but it did work. And I was able to in 2020. The first time I was on payroll was the day that the world shut down on COVID. So you can imagine that was a little stressful. But we did have this retainer. It was short term because we didn't know where this business would end up running at without big investors behind them. So that's where I was at. That was my sales consultancy. I quickly, moved that into, I need something that's more sustainable, that doesn't require me to work 18 to 20 hours a day. I need something that's going to actually scale. The value cannot just be my life, for a customer. So then in 2020 through to 2021, we launched a brand with called Ara Media, but that was a business marketing podcasting brand. And over the course of 6 or so months, I had a really stellar operations person. She was on Upwork. She came on to help me. I was getting between 400 and 600 emails a day at this time. So I was like, I need somebody to look at these emails. So I hired her off Upwork for $10, or it was $20 an hour for 10 hours a week. She quickly morphed into actually running my marketing company fully within 6 to 8 months. And we grew this business to, I think at its height, I think it was at almost, I forget exactly where it was at, but it was almost at, so we basically doubled the business from where we were with that first client just with marketing services. And I actually hired somebody from Cairn to do a lot of work on that. So that was cool. But the full circle there. So our media, though, that helped us get to a certain level where I had a balance sheet. I had, and I don't know if you guys have talked too much about balance sheets and stuff, but I had basically a book of business, an asset that I built that I can now use to buy another business. So then I bought DocLive, which was this software company, in November. And again, they hadn't solved this problem. Even with another cut of about, this problem was still not solved. And it got to the point where the owners were like, we don't necessarily want to solve this problem. We want to get rid of this problem. So we had this business valued. We got it third-party valued. You guys did one of them. Another company did a similar valuation just to make sure we were getting what it was worth. We paid exactly what it was worth in November of 21. And then over the course of November of 21 to, and this is a big gap from where I was at, but I'll hit some highlights. We 12x'd this business, ran profitable almost every month, probably every quarter, maybe. Sean could. Quarterly, yeah, all right. So we 12x this business. Annually, we were running a profit every year. Yeah, there you go, yeah. So 12x, the business, the value, we actually, all that I did was reorient to this triangle. That's like, everything was this. It's like, okay, this is the value, this is the cost, or the price rather, that I'm able to sell based off of the value that we're delivering to clients. Let's rebuild this business from the ground up. What do we actually need to do to have a profit with the price that I'm selling it at? Because it was enough. I mean, it was every customer paying an average of a year. You've got enough business there. You've got enough revenue coming in to put together a business that can support that. So that's what we did. It was very, very challenging. A lot of tough decisions to make. So, I lost the operations manager the first month, who basically ran everything about the operations in the company. I came up on the sales side, as you know, so I know nothing about how this product is delivered at all. And 1 week in, I get a 2-week letter of resignation, and she puts in her 2 weeks of vacation. So it was literally a 2-hour notice that I had that the operations manager was out. And then, like I said, I also had no money in the bank when we started that, when we bought that business. So I had to figure that out as well. So definitely 12x was a lot of scars to get there. But it happened, and due in large part, I think, to getting the company around, like, where are we going? What kind of value are we delivering? How do we exponentially increase the number of, this is like one customer, right? How do we exponentially increase the number of triangles that we're delivering to our market? So that we can build a better business. Honestly, over the course of this time period, top line revenue grew from, I think it was like almost right when we bought it.
Yeah, I think it was under.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll call it when I bought the business. That's how much money they were bringing in. That's terrible. And then when I sold the business, our top line revenue was, I think. Yeah, okay. I know we were on pace to do this year on a cash basis. Again, you guys should look at the P&L. You can totally show them the P&L to show the difference there between cash and accrual. It's a good lesson around this. So if you look at this, that's not 12x, right? We didn't go from to. So it's really a matter of when you optimize the different aspects of this triangle, you don't necessarily need to just blow this out of the water to get just a tremendous level of return on building a business. And again, I wasn't planning on selling this business, but when a company came by and offered me 12x what I bought it for, and also a great opportunity, in the future, I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. So all that to say, I think as you approach your careers, as you think about how to either start your own business and grow it. Oh, I also sold our media in 24 as well, and for about 1x revenue. So that it was a really great, opportunity. And it's one of our friends that we sold it to. Sean and I, another client of you that I sold it to, and they've been dominating, with that business. They've been growing. I'm still a 10% owner in the business. It's been great. But anyway, all that to say, as you approach your career, whether you're going to build a business, whether your business plan could be 3 sentences. What value am I going to deliver to customers? What kind of pricing do I need to charge? And then what's my cost? Around that. Honestly, that could get you started. That's what I did for our media in a coffee shop in about 2-3 hours. Is I sat down. I need to get a scalable business. It was 1 page. And sold it, from 0 to, about, 2 years later. So it's super powerful, and I would definitely encourage you to think about this. moving forward. So that's all I got.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Yeah.
So I'll add a couple of things of why did I bring Steve in here. Number one, I really wanted you to see the value of what we're learning. What we're learning in this class is foundational accounting. We're not learning how do you time your working capital so that you can switch from monthly recurring revenue to annual recurring revenue to fund your business. That's a lot more complex. That's intermediate accounting. If that sounds like fun to you, I highly recommend considering an accounting degree, or even at least a minor. But really what we're trying to do in this class is equip you guys to start having these conversations once you graduate, or ideally before that. So for Stephen, some of the businesses he listed was, for anyone downstairs, you're throwing a party, feel free to hire him. But that's not a or even $1 business at this point, but it was very low barrier to entry. All they needed was to get enough capital to buy some party equipment, and they rented it, they made some money, they bought some more party equipment. Anyone in this room could do that. With our media, Stephen started doing podcasting, and he had a pretty good timing for it. He did it starting in 2020.
Yeah, January 2020.
And that's when podcasting blew through the roof. And he learned a skill that not a lot of people had because people didn't listen to podcasts before. And then he taught himself how to do sales and how to do marketing. He read books like by the Koch brothers and other industry leaders out there so that he knew things that his clients didn't. Not so that he could be the smartest person in the room, but so that he could create value, so he could create ROI. For our media, I don't know if there's any sort of cost.
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
No
I mean,
startup costs.
We created the LLC after it was already running.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there was,
I signed a client. First thing I did was sign a client for $5K a month retainer. That was like the first step in the business.
so
It's like, all right, we'll figure out the cost from here.
So if you guys have an interest in starting a business, don't wait until you graduate and say, I want to start a business then. Do it. Start it this year. A couple of things I also want to highlight here from what Stephen said is, number one, the network you have is one of the most valuable assets you have. And so Stephen never would have had the opportunity to acquire picks if he didn't get that job doing leads. And I didn't know someone who got him that job. And he wouldn't have sold the company at the time that he did if someone hadn't made an introduction to the right person. And so whether you guys are meeting someone at chapel, or you're meeting a guest speaker in your class, or whatever that might look like, I highly recommend connect with them, ask questions. Go ahead and ask for an internship, or ask for a job, ask for an opportunity to learn more, because that can dramatically change the trajectory of your career.
Yeah, to highlight that, the director of finance for the software business was my best friend from high school. Person I sold our media to was another person I went to high school with. So the network is huge.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, I know a lot of students that went to school with me who, no offense Stephen, but are just as smart as Stephen. And right now, they're making $70,000 a year. Stephen's the CEO of a company having exited 2 companies already. So completely different scenario. Drive is a huge factor there. I've never met someone as driven as Stephen. I'm not kidding, and I'm not overstating it. Like, if you guys connect with him on LinkedIn, you'll quickly see Stephen is next level. But it's not going to be your grades, it's not going to be your intelligence that's going to set you apart. It's going to be your drive, who you know, and then those things as well, and what you're willing to learn, and how quickly you can learn. So I think that's everything I wanted to comment on Stephen. But one thing Stephen really highlighted is how does working in business relate to your value and security? So last week we had an exam. This week we haven't started any new content. We're not going to start new content until next Tuesday. I'm going to post an assignment tonight for us to work on over the weekend. And the assignment's going to be, what does the Bible have to say about the role of money in the life of a Christian? And all it's required is one page. You can write 6 if you want. But what I want you guys to do is find at least 3 different spots in the Bible that talk about money. It's one of the most talked about subjects in the Bible, so it shouldn't be hard. And I want you guys to start thinking about, what is my philosophy of money? How do I approach it? How does it relate to my value, my security? Because if we get to the end of this accounting class, and I have taught you guys how to analyze financial statements, I've taught you how to be better business people, but I haven't taught you how to keep money in the right perspective as a Christian, then I failed as a professor. So that's what we're going to be working on over the weekend. I'll open it up for Q&A. If anyone has questions for Stephen.
For sure. I will also say, I think it's a tremendous blessing to have walked this path. I didn't chart this. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon when I was in your seat. So definitely didn't chart this path. But, it's been, every good gift is given from the Lord. I think this is genuinely a good gift given, and it's meant to be shared. So that's my goal. So all that to say, if you do want to talk further about this more specifically or apply it to your career, LinkedIn is primarily where I'm at. I deleted most of the other social media accounts because it was a little bit distracting. But hit me up on LinkedIn and shoot me a message, and we can definitely get together. I'm local as well, so be happy to get together and talk further about it. But what kind of questions might I be able to answer so far? Yeah, go ahead.
You're talking about like interacting with your customers, wanting to approach it from giving them value first.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned a little bit about like interacting with your employees and the people that you're leading, and not being like how do I just make profit for myself?
Right.
Like how do you approach interacting with your employees so they don't feel that way?
So words are the start. I think a lot of people will give lip service to this, and myself included, and I've got people, including my director of finance, who hold me accountable to what I say to our employees. But I say that we're a people-first company, both customers and employees. But what really matters is when you actually do things that are people first. So like our benefits plan is competitive with a much larger company. Like November of last year, we brought every employee and their spouse to a resort in Florida for a week and enjoyed, a week together. That was about I'll be honest, about a bill that we paid that we had no reason to pay. There's no reason to pay that. So, yeah, Sean fought a little bit on that, but we balled out. Like we went hard. But that's a step where it's like I'm not just saying like, hey, I care about you and your family. It's like, hey, bring your spouse to this resort in Florida for a week. I think that was a little bit of a dramatic step, especially for where we're at. Not prescriptive at all. But I think it highlights you put your money where your mouth is, and you put your actions immediately after your words. Is huge.
Yeah, Steve's also a very good teacher. In a lot of our conversations, it's my role to have expertise on the accounting side, and I find that I'm learning stuff from Steven. And I think that's true with a lot of his employees. Steven really is focused on how can, regardless if you're an employee, customer, or whoever you are, he has a unique desire to see everyone do as well as they can. And so if that's one of his employees and they need training to move to the next level, and then reaching that next level means they're going to exit his company, Steven's still pursuing that for his employees. I've seen him do it multiple times. And I've seen his employees outperform while they're with him because they see it too.
Yeah. Like my director of finance was an occupational therapist, no finance degree at all. Our person who runs the service desk was a cop in Akron, wanted to get into tech. We've had a couple different salespeople that came from like nonprofit world. Our person implementing our software, the lead implementer of our software, was a clerk at Petco before working at our company. So it is really cool to see, these people, and it doesn't matter how big your business is, you can invest in your people. So I would definitely encourage that as well.
Any other questions? Okay. That's it for class today.
Awesome.
I recommend talking to Steven before you guys leave, but
Yeah,
you guys
sure.
are free to go.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.